everyone. Good morning. Okay, we're going to try that again. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Awesome. I know most of you had a very fun night. I am so excited to be here with you. This is actually my first LeadDev ever. So it's really crazy to be here on stage, but I'm really excited to share with you things that I've learned over my time leading developer experience at Twitter and from other parts of my career also. So who am I? I'm a senior engineering manager at Twitter. My journey in tech started leading quality engineering initially, writing test automation scripts for mobile development, then led to being a systems engineer at a major airline, working on DevOps and cloud-native technologies. Now, I lead developer experience, which means that I talk to internal developers to make sure that their experience is great, especially around the pain points of documentation, support in the local development environment. My team also works to make common processes like migrations easier for teams to balance with their run the business work. My experience, I think, as an engineer has created a lot of empathy for the toil that developers go through as they navigate our internal environment. But to be transparent, I found it pretty difficult to make sure that I was considering all the facets of their environment because, after all, I don't have a product background. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a framework or an easy way to remember as I'm engaging with my internal customers to ask the right questions as I got their feedback, to make sure that my team was working on the right things to improve their experience and differentiate it from the status quo. So today I'll be sharing the first iteration of that framework with you, but before I do that, I want to ask you a question. How many of you remember the first time or any time that you were trying to complete some task and that process broke? You couldn't do what you needed to do. Anyone? Okay, good show of hands. In the context of everyday life, maybe you were trying to order something to come here to London to LeadDev and you couldn't do it or it wasn't delivered in time. Or maybe even in the context of your role as an engineer or leader, something broke, you were trying to integrate a library into your framework into your library or something of the sort. Or as a leader, our great task of performance reviews. So that's my story. I had just started as a manager, and I was really putting a lot of thought, time, and attention in my first performance reviews for my directs. Surely enough, I wrote paragraphs upon paragraphs of notes from our one-on-ones, how they could have opportunities for improvement, and what I would do as their leader to enable them. I went to go save it in the system, and surely enough, a blank page. After 4 to 5 hours of writing information upon information, everything was gone. It was painful, very, very painful. So I think we can all agree that disruptions are not fun, and whatever situation you were thinking about, it probably didn't bring a positive emotional response. Those feelings that you might have thought or felt as you recollected that situation are called customer emotions. The textbook definition of customer emotions is a measure of how customers feel about their experience with a company or product or service. The dynamics behind customer emotions are pretty complex, and I am not a psychologist, but I like to sum it down to whether a product or experience brings joy. Those are the ones that keep us coming back time after time, or even recommending it to others. I think that a quote by one of my favorite authors, Maya Angelou, sums it up pretty well. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Applied to customers' experience, customers may not remember exactly what the quality of your product was. They may not even remember their exact experience, but they will remember how it made them feel. So why do these feelings matter? Why do customer emotions even matter at all? They are the key indicators of a customer's likelihood to continue on their journey or even recommend it to others. Now, we are all leaders serving customers, right? So you may serve customers that are external to your company, the world even. Or you may be like me, serving customers who are internal to your engineering environment. As leaders serving customers that are wherever, a question that we have to consider are the solutions that I create going to keep my customers coming back time and time again? Applied to an internal developer experience from my perspective, this can lead to employee engagement and retention. If that experience is not good, people could leave. We heard one of my colleagues, Daniel Burke, mention yesterday that attrition is a $1 trillion problem. So a question that I think about time after time again is, especially in one of the hottest job markets right now, could the tools our engineers use and the experience that they have be the reason or contributing a factor for them leaving our company? The simple answer is it could be. So I set out on a journey to create not just a satisfying customer experience, I wanted to create an experience that brought joy on an emotional level. So instead of just using the products and tools that we delivered, instead of just using the products and tools that we offered, the experience would actually just be a key factor for them to continue staying with our company and enjoying the process of development. Before I go into the framework, I wanted to call out that customer emotion is not the same as customer satisfaction. While it's great to have customers that are satisfied with a product or service, it's even better to invoke that emotional response that leads to customer promotion and loyalty. I think we all can think of one brand or experience that keeps us coming back time after time again. Maybe it's using the same realtor over the time that you've searched for a home, or maybe sticking with the same car manufacturer because the experience is great. For me, it directly resonates with travel. There's a particular company that I've worked with time and time again because each of my experiences with them have invoked that emotional response. I found a Harvard Business Review article that I think highlights the key difference between customer emotion and customer satisfaction. I'm not going to drain this slide, but I wanted to make sure I captured everything. The first part of it says many companies are busy mapping their customer experience across many different mediums, gathering mountains of data from surveys, customer tracking systems, and third-party programs. Their stated goal is to typically improve customer satisfaction at each step of the customer journey, but overall customer satisfaction is often already high and seldom a competitive differentiator. Our research across hundreds of brands in dozens of categories shows that this is the good part. The most effective way to maximize customer value is to move beyond mere customer satisfaction and connect with customers at an emotional level, tapping into their fundamental motivations and fulfilling their deep, often unspoken emotional needs. That's so deep. So I read this over and over again and I thought, wow, fulfilling fundamental motivations and fulfilling deep emotional, often unspoken needs, that really resonated, and that's the experience that I wanted to create. So think back to that one brand or experience that keeps coming back, that you keep going back to time and time again. Were there moments within your journey as a customer that addressed your fundamental motivations directly? Were your needs met, even if they weren't directly articulated? For me, the answer is a resounding yes. Within my travel experience, there were unexpected moments that made me feel really special and valued as a customer. That kept me coming back time after time. So, back to the main questions. How can we as leaders within serving our individual customer bases set out to address those fundamental motivations and fulfill those emotional needs? Here's the framework that I want to present to you today. This is just a starting point or a structure that you can start on and build upon. Please don't take it as the end-all be-all because it's not. This is just what has worked for my team and I as we've worked with our internal customers. All right, the first part of the framework, discoverability. Discoverability in the context of product and in interface design is the degree of ease with which a user can find all of the elements or features of a new system when they first encounter it. One question I ask myself in the context of developer experience is, how easy is it for developers to find the capabilities, new features, or functions within our environment and learn to use the things that they find? Now, to connect discoverability back to a fundamental motivation of a customer. A fundamental motivation for individuals is to feel a sense of freedom, act independently without obligations or restrictions. When it comes to discoverability, we want to make sure that individuals have a path forward, or they can discover the path forward. Unless they can do this, they won't have that sense of freedom. So what did we do to figure out how to unlock this fundamental motivation and connect with customers? The first thing we did was user research and interviews. Without getting an understanding of our users, we won't have an easy way to figure out what the improvements could be. So we talked to them. One way we did this, and one way that I found this immensely valuable, was shadowing. Working with customers of various experience levels, including people new to your environment, like new hires from my perspective, to watch them to understand how they go about navigating the environment without coaching. Another thing that we looked into was search analytics. What things were people seeking out to find, and how could we make them more readily available for them to use on their day-to-day? Based on our findings and gaps, here's some things that we did to improve discoverability. Single sourcing guidance by creating templates, hubs, to reduce the toil within the experience of discovering new and relevant information was a game changer. Developers wanted a path to find the information they needed at time, real time, as they needed it. Another thing that really worked well for us was having centralized support. Even though this wasn't self-service, engineers loved to have a place to go to get the information that they needed. If they could talk to a real person, it was even better. But the caveat is it wasn't self-service. The last thing we did was implement universal search. This was a game changer. By creating one internal channel where users could search for everything that they needed, it was really just amazing for people to start leveraging this, so they didn't have to go between tools to find relevant information. Through the implementation of these, we measured some results. The first thing we did was measure onboarding and time to productivity. For this, we asked the question, how long does it take for a new hire to get up to speed on tooling and push their first change? We wanted to make that quicker by making our tools and documentation more discoverable. The next thing we tracked was tool usage. So within our tools, we instrumented them in a way that made sure that we knew exactly how much more they were being leveraged. Lastly, the ever-faithful customer satisfaction and Net Promoter Score. We run quarterly surveys for our developers and ask the question, how is this experience going for you? Or would you be willing to recommend this to a colleague? To understand discoverability in depth, I did a lot of research on customers and marketing. And this particular document that I'm referencing here was really meaningful. So this is a master thesis completed by 2 master students at University of Gothenburg in Sweden. And it goes into depth on how discoverability of code snippets impact productivity at Spotify. Their research methodologies shed light on how to derive the needed information and determine the current state of discoverability in the environment. Then it talks about how they implemented processes or tools to make it better. So if you're looking to improve discoverability, I highly recommend looking at this document. All right, so that concludes the first part of the framework. The next one is a little similar to discoverability. It's usability. Usability is defined by one of the leading user-based research firms, Norman Nielsen, as a quality attribute that assesses how easy user interfaces are to use. The word usability also refers to methods for improving ease of use during the design process. It's defined by these 5 quality components. Learnability. How easy is it for the user to accomplish basic tasks the first time they come across it? Efficiency. Once they've learned the design, how quickly can they progress through it? Memorability. If a user were to go away and come back to the system, are they still proficient? Could they establish proficiency easily again? Errors. How many errors do users make when progressing through this process? How severe are those errors, and how do they recover from them? And lastly, satisfaction. How pleasant is it for a user to use this design? One question when it comes to usability that I've asked from a developer experience perspective is, can our internal developers fulfill their goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction? Connected back to a fundamental motivation of customers, that we all have customers, it's the sense of feeling freedom and being able to act independently, exactly the same as discoverability. I'll also say, besides being able to accomplish a specific goal, users want to complete that in as little time and with as little effort as possible. So how do we improve usability in our environment to connect with customers and fulfill that fundamental motivation? Usability testing. So highly recommend going about this within your environment with any customer that you have. It's basically testing, evaluating a product or service with a user and making sure that you're walking through each step of the task and watching what they do throughout that. The goal is to identify usability problems and collect qualitative and quantitative data about the processes. You can also determine a user's satisfaction with the product. There are two types of usability testing. The first one is open, which means you're designing it with minimal explanation. Think asking a developer to push this code to this environment and scale it to 3 replicas. There's no additional context given. Then as an observer, you're watching them go through this process and figuring out what is not easy to come by, information is easy to come by, and what can I do to make it easier for them to get to that end goal. The next type of usability testing is close-ended. So these are very specific and goal-oriented tasks. They are based on the idea that there's only one correct answer. Close-ended tasks are great for testing specific elements like onboarding documentation, things like that. So basically, you watch a user walk through this information and figure out where the gaps are. After we did usability testing, we made a couple of improvements to make that experience better. The first thing we did was define golden paths. Golden paths reduce that barrier of entry for a user into our system. Basically, it lowered the time it took for a user to accomplish anything. The golden paths, they were defined to create a clear line to accomplishing common user goals in this reduced toil. So think back to those 5 quality components of usability: learnability and memorability. The next thing that we did, and you're all probably familiar with, is automate, automate, automate as much as possible. Make it easy for people to get core things within the process done. When I worked as a systems engineer, we were standing up a whole new CI system. And one of the things that we thought about as we were implementing, it was Jenkins, how can we make it easy for people to get familiar with this system and not really mess up the environment because it was shared infrastructure? So basically, we automated all of the common activities through configuration files, like setting up SSH and spinning up different worker nodes of various infrastructure flavors. This reduced the level of effort when engineers sought out to use our service. So automate, automate, automate is one way that we go about improving usability. Finally, error prevention. Error prevention is big in my current environment because we have tons of languages that are leveraged every day. So we use linting as a way to prevent code failures. And it's actually great at preventing or reducing the times when engineers cannot accomplish what they set out to do. So to measure usability improvements, we started with task success rate. So we instrumented our systems and tools to determine what is the percentage of success that a user is having when trying to use a tool for a specific purpose. For this metric, you want it as close to 100% as possible, and you want to track that over time as you introduce new features and capabilities within your workflow. The next thing that we looked at was time-based efficiency. So how quickly can a user progress from start to finish? Same way as success rate, you want this to remain the same or even be lower as you introduce new features within the environment. So with these changes, we were able to create a better and more usable system. The next part of the framework, and we're halfway through, is capability. So we're all probably familiar with what a capability is, but I'm going to define it anyways. It's the power of or ability to do something. A question that I ask myself related to capabilities and developer experience are, do our offerings address all personas within our customer base? As we've done with other parts of the framework, let's connect it back to a fundamental motivation for customers. As an individual, we want to feel a sense of belonging and have an affiliation with people that are like us or we aspire to be like. We also want to feel like we're a part of a group. To sum this up, individuals want to feel included and considered from their personal perspective within their flow as a customer. In most cases, a one-size-fits-all solution will not make for a sense of belonging. If there are clear considerations to be accounted for, that would make it a better experience. So how do we determine what those capabilities are? Journey mapping. So this is a process frequently leveraged in external customer research, and basically it's creating a visual story of your entire customer process, including their interactions with your workflow. After your overall journey is defined, you define those individual personas that would be inputs into that journey. For developer experience, there are tons of considerations in my environment. There are back-end engineers, machine learning engineers, mobile client engineers that we have to consider. So we take each of those individual personas and map them through. As you go through this process, you are able to identify what gaps exist for those individual personas. In addition to journey mapping, surveys are a great way to capture qualitative feedback on where capabilities could be improved. So once we found the gaps, how did we improve them? So actually, it was pretty straightforward. We just created solutions for those personas that were missing. Another improvement that we implemented was real-time feedback. We all know when feedback is delayed, we miss opportunities to correct a critical aspect of our customer experience. If the feedback we receive is telling us one of our critical customers is having a hard time using this tool or function, but we don't learn this until our quarterly NPS survey, they may have already stopped using it out of frustration. So we wanted to enable real-time feedback, and there's tooling to put this within our developer workflow. How did we measure this? Customer satisfaction NPS is the only way I found, so during office hours, if you have any other ideas, I would love to hear it. This is a great book that I've used to really hone in and define our journey mapping process, and I highly recommend reading this. It's a book by James Parton and Carolyn Luco, and they talk about how to build a successful developer program and really map the customer journey from an internal perspective, but I believe you can leverage externally as well. All right, we're in the home stretch. This is the last portion of the framework, credibility. So the basic definition of credibility is the quality of being trusted and believed in. And most of us are familiar with the concept of credibility from our perspective of the question, how reliable are your products at delivering what you said it would deliver? There have been some key situations, one of which I just mentioned with performance reviews, where the products were not that credible, or they weren't credible from my perspective. And they indeed brought a negative emotional response. When it comes to connecting credibility back to a fundamental motivation of a customer, we want to feel secure. We want to believe that what we have today will be there tomorrow and pursue goals and dreams without worry. So, back to credibility, that feeling of security comes with the customer's experience of a reliable, available service that they can leverage at any time that they want. So, in our environment, what do we do to determine the gaps of credibility? The first thing we did was talk to people in a controlled environment via focus groups. This was a great way to get directional feedback on how we could improve their experience, and it also provided a lot of qualitative responses that we were able to double-click on to assess how their confidence in the flow was lowered. This real-time engagement was also a great time to probe deeper into the exact thing that reduced that confidence. For my team in developer experience, we also refer to a lot of incident management data. This provides key pointers to some trends that are causing downtime or a loss of credibility within our environment. And of course, as a part of incident management, we leveraged postmortems. So improvements. One of the main things that we did was take action on those things that were detrimental to developer confidence. That meant prioritizing our action items as a result of postmortems. Also, within focus groups, we created clear roadmap objectives to improve developer confidence. The one thing that I'm really proud of is the implementation of centralized support. A lot of times, credibility, it's a questionable. As an engineer, if I come across a problem, I don't know if it's me or the system. So by creating centralized support in a 24/5 posture, we created a channel for people to make sure or do a sanity check. As it comes to metrics for measuring credibility improvements, the main thing that we looked at was tool uptime. The next thing we looked at was mean time between outages. And by higher tool uptime and lower and higher mean time between outages. These were great improvements to developer confidence over time. So we've gone through all of the components of the framework, and I wanted to bring us back to this quote. As leaders, we are empowered to change the way individuals experience the products and services that we work on. I encourage you to think about your customers' emotions and their needs as you solve problems to create a fantastic experience that is differentiated from the status quo. As you go about this, don't forget to keep your ducks in a row. Being that I work for Twitter, I could not leave this stage without making a bird reference, so here it is. It's an easy way to remember the framework, DUCC, Discoverability, Usability, Capabilities, and Credibility. Things to keep in mind as you differentiate your customer's experience from others. Here are some references, and that's my time. Thank you for listening, and yeah.